Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the ECAC Riot Fall 2020 Invitational Qualifiers, where we have two really great teams here today. We have Sacred Heart University and U Albany, who will be playing in their matchup here today, where we'll get started. I'm joined today by Joey. Hi, Joey. How you doing?
I'm good.
Excellent. Excellent. So once we end up getting into the pick and ban phase here, we'll be able to kind of see what these two teams are going to be playing. Both of them ended up matching up against each other earlier this season, where U Albany was able to take the win over Sacred Heart in a 2-0 fashion. But Sacred Heart has kind of been able to turn on the heat over these past couple of days, especially with some really key wins against SUNY Canton and Stockton University, both of which were 2-0s in pretty convincing fashion. So it looks like we're going to get started here just in a moment. We can actually go over the players. For U Albany, who will be on the blue side, we have Kafu in the top lane, Reaper 7, 8, 9 in the jungle, Good Ken in the mid lane, Rune TMC in the bot lane, and then Yox as support. And for Sacred Heart, we have Drip Drop in the top lane, Jabarkai, I guess. What do you think, Joey? Maybe. And then
Yes,
Game
sounds
Fanatic
good.
1, Game Fanatic 1 in mid, Andrew in the bot lane, and Major Binks in the support. This should be a really great game as well. Especially, I'm going to mostly be looking at that top lane matchup of Kafu and Drip Drop. Just kind of looking at some of the big wins that Sacred Heart was able to take over these past couple of days against SUNY Canton and against Stockton. Most of those wins seem to come from the jungle and top lane synergy. Drip Drop has been playing a lot of Darius over these past couple of days. And, he's been carrying on that champion in particular. Against the SUNY Canton game, I'm just trying to pull up some of the stats. He was able to go 8, 0, and 9 as Darius, as well as an 8, 1, and 13 performance out of Jabarkai and the from the Graves in the jungle on that matchup. So see how these teams are going to ban. They end up banning the Graves first. That's not really surprised. As we were saying, the Sacred Heart jungler was doing quite well on that over the past couple of matches there. So I would really like to see Sacred Heart ban the Mordekaiser. That's perfect timing as well. Because, again, looking at some of the U Albany games, U Albany has a really high tendency to play that Mordekaiser in the top lane as well. That's just kind of been a signature champion for Kafu. Right. When he's on that champion, has been able to do a lot of really heavy lifting. So, Caitlyn ban coming out from U Albany in a counter with the Lulu ban, which were both really interesting as well. The Lulu ban's a little more interesting. I don't think U Albany has a huge tendency to play it. They did end up playing it in Game 2 over their win against Sacred Heart originally. So, again, not a bad ban. Caitlyn has just been incredibly strong over these past couple of patches. So seeing that ban coming out from U Albany, and of course the Darius to round that out. So this is a very top-focused, top-centric draft that we're seeing from both of these teams.
I don't need more enemies.
And following it up with the Senna. So in this instance here, Jhin is quite good, just kind of as an initial pick if U Albany wants to pick that up. Ashe is also available, and again, Ashe is really, really strong right now. U Albany also has a really high tendency, or I should say Good Ken has a high tendency to play Lucian in the mid lane. That's a really good pick, as both of those champions can be flexed into those lanes. So, and there it is, the first pick, Lucian. Lucian is such a hard lane bully. Wow, lane bully. Especially for a lot of those normal mid lane champions you might see, the Syndra, the Orianna, things like that. A Heimerdinger would be interesting, Joey. I don't know. I know you're not a huge fan of the Heimerdinger, but that's okay.
I definitely am not.
They end up going with the Orianna, though, which is a really safe pick. And it looks like they were hovering Ashe for a minute, but now they're going Yasuo. Let's see what they pick. Orianna into Lucian is a good matchup. That's just kind of a neutralizing matchup. And they do pick the Ashe. So Ashe in this matchup does have a couple of counters still available to them. They have the Kai'Sa. Senna is banned, so that's kind of the typical matchup that you would see picked against the Ashe. Aphelios is still on the table, especially with a Lucian mid. Aphelios would be pretty solid into the Ashe comp here. So perfect. All right, and we actually see a Lilia coming out from U Albany. So that's a pretty substantial one as well.
Aaron, I can't hear you.
I realized I muted myself. That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. So Lilia's really interesting, though, as I was saying. It's really good, especially with the Lucian mid. That mixed damage makes it really tough to kind of itemize for your lane. And then you have the Leona in the bot lane, too. Just a counter pick. Typically, that's good into Ashe. On top of that, Hecarim to kind of round out Sacred Heart's side. So for U Albany, they typically will want to start pinching some of the support pool. And you kind of see that, especially with the Braum pick. Whereas Sacred Heart, they probably want to just continue picking or pinching that top side. They banned the Shen, which is really interesting. As Kafu has played the Shen, he hasn't really shown a lot of interest, or he hasn't shown a lot of want to play onto that champion. But then the Ornn ban on top of that, so banning out all three champions that Kafu has actually played throughout this tournament in all of their games. He's played Mordekaiser, Shen, and Ornn. That's it. Those are the only champions. He has a loss on Ornn, 2 losses on Shen.
Never pick a fight
So banning both of those out and banning the set, that makes that really interesting. So we should get a really cool pick or really unique pick for the top lanes. Rumble would be really interesting to see from Sacred Heart. However, they would need something a little AD heavy, like a Pike even could be kind of interesting in bot lane. But we'll have to see what they go with. Thresh is a typically good champion to play into the Leona, especially if you can get that flay out from the Leona's E and the Leona's dash. If you can just kind of push her away, you kind of disrupt all engage that the Leona wants to have. So that was really, really strong too. Not only that, but they took the Leona away from, as I was saying earlier, the Sacred Heart team, who again, they're really, really big into the Leona. And so they pick a Gangplank for Kafu. That's really, really interesting, especially because Gangplank is typically a champion that you just kind of want to farm up, play incredibly safe. You're not necessarily going to win for your lane. So it kind of shows a little bit of focus for U Albany, especially into that mid lane. And then the Jhin pickup here would be great too. Even though Ashe does have a way to kind of stop the Jhin or has a lot of capabilities to prevent Jhin from overtaking the game, especially with the Ashe arrow, it's typically seen as a little bit of a counter. However, when we look at the Sacred Heart draft, Jhin has a really great matchup. There aren't any major tanks kind of coming out from here. You have the Thresh that can go a little bit tanky. You have the Hecarim that can go a little bit tanky. And if they lock in this Camille, the Jhin and the Lucian can certainly take over this game. There isn't a lot of AP coming out from the side of U Albany. However, the Lilia is still going to be pumping out a lot of damage over time. So, and even looking at the other side on Sacred Heart, both of these teams, if the game goes very late, there aren't a lot of AP options unless that Orianna can go more for a damage over time build or damage per second build. You can build like the tried and true like Roa into Seraph's Embrace Orianna, which has been seen a lot. It scales a lot better, deals a lot more damage late game. But a lot of people still like that Luden's build on the Orianna to just kind of get that initial burst. So we're going to be loading up into this game here. So once we end up do that, Jag, I know, has actually been able to join us in a replacement for Joey here. So he'll be loading up in just 1 second. So once I can hear Jag, we can talk a little bit about these matchups. Righty, and we are back, and I am joined here right now by Jag, as Joey had to leave for a moment. So how are you doing, Jag?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Jag08. I've casted before with the JWoo crew, and I'm very happy to be here.
And so we have a really cool matchup here today, as I was kind of talking about it a little bit earlier. This is actually a rematch of the quarterfinals earlier. Quarterfinals? No, semifinals, actually, that took place of the winners bracket between Sacred Heart and UAlbany. So this should be a really cool matchup. UAlbany did take that in a 2-0 fashion, actually. But Sacred Heart, they've been coming back to where Sacred Heart took some really, really good wins. Sacred Heart is technically the 6th seed, whereas UAlbany is the 3 seed. But Sacred Heart has come back. They have taken games. They actually won matchups off of SUNY Canton, who was the 4 seed, and they also beat Stockton, who was the 2 seed. So
let me ask you, 6 seed, 4 seed. What is that even? I'm not sure what a seed is. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the bracket was seeded based on some of the team's averages their overall averages of the players on their team. So there was a large 13-team bracket where they would play each other. It's a double elimination bracket as well. So again, both Sacred Heart and UAlbany have lost at least once, and only once, where UAlbany actually lost to Johnson & Wales, and then Sacred Heart lost to UAlbany to kind of put them into that losers bracket. And so now these teams are kind of fighting for their qualifier lives. So,
gotcha. Cool. So yeah, here we are. We're toward the end of the bracket here, is what you're suggesting.
Exactly. So this is our qualifier match. Winning team qualifies, losing team goes home, their fall season is over. So I mean, there's a lot on the line for this particular matchup. So we are in a best of 3, so we at least get to see 2 games minimum. So that'll always be good.
Got it. Awesome. So, and tonight is tonight the penultimate, or?
Yes. So we'll be seeing a game later on today at 7 p.m. where Johnson and Wales will end up facing off against the winners of this game in particular. So
awesome. That's good to hear.
So teams are just kind of starting out. Sacred Heart on red side here. They are actually just kind of lining up, just kind of looking to prevent any invades. They got a really nice ward there right in the jungle entrance that you can kind of see. Albany is just kind of scattering right now, which is kind of interesting. So if they wanted to do a late invade here on Sacred Heart, it would be really effective. But both teams are just going to kind of handshake the early game here as they're kind of going to go back and forth. So
yeah. So hold on, just give me 1 second. Sorry.
I know you joined a little bit late there, Jag, but I was talking a little bit about some of these matchups. So we're going to be watching a lot of the mid lane matchup against the Lucian and the Orianna, especially because that matchup can go pretty much either way. Either the Orianna, the red side team, either wants to play really, really safe just until the early game is done from the Lucian, or the Lucian wants to play super aggressive. So it'll be a nice tug of war that we kind of see. So. And we can even see the Lucian is already pushing into the Orianna really, really early, looking to roam already. He's looking to find the Hecarim in the jungle, and he just places a ward and knows that Hecarim has already taken... What is it? Sorry, he's taken some of his chickens there, or his raptors, sorry. The colloquial term is always chickens, so it makes me laugh. It's okay. But... junglers are looking to get their first back, but we actually might see the Hecarim coming in top here against the Gangplank. Not usually a great matchup, but Camille comes in with her strike. Hecarim rolls him down. Gangplank ends up flashing, eats his oranges. He's going to get out. Everything should be okay. No! He ends up getting first blooded against by the Camille, by the Hecarim. A fantastic gank coming in from Sacred Heart. Now, that's really, really big, especially because Hecarim, he wants to get a lot of gold early. He wants to get a lot of kills early. He wants to make sure that he can just kind of start getting ahead, get as close to his Triforce, or get, as near to a Triforce as he can in the early part of the game. And then that way there, he can just kind of snowball. He ends up taking the blue buff away from the Lilia, which is even bigger. And so this is already turning into a really rough start for Albany.
So Aaron, you mentioned a gank there a moment ago. I just wanted to clarify that's when the jungler leaves the jungle itself and jumps in and assists a player in getting a quick kill. Am I correct?
Yes, and we're even going to see another one here as the Hecarim comes in using his E, charging in. Camille jumps on him too. Gangplank just can't get away. And, oh wow, the Camille ends up blowing the flash, using the sweeping strike, and finishing off the Gangplank.
Ooh.
And now Leona's even jumping in from Albany, so they're trying to get a counter. Ashe ends up flashing. Thresh is in a bit of trouble. Now he ends up throwing in the death sentence. Jhin flashes forward. And he doesn't quite finish either of those kills, so a lot of summoners blown. Flash from the Ashe, Ignite from the Leona, Flash from the Jhin. So again, Lilia will definitely want to look to come bot lane as she can put some pressure onto the Ashe there.
So it's still anybody's game, though, right? Like, I mean, this early in the game, I feel like kills, they have gravity, obviously. They put you ahead, but anything can happen, really.
And Gangplank is definitely one of those champions that he has a lot of memes around him, and I'll actually finish that thought in just a moment because we see a fight. Lucian ends up exhausting the Orianna. Orianna flashes the Lilia bubble. Oh, and now he's in a bit of trouble as Lilia ends up finishing off the kill for Albany, finally answering one of those 2 deaths top from Kafu back. So But going back to that initial thought that you were talking about, Jag, as well, where, yes, it is anyone's game. Gangplank is one of those champions that he can be 0-5, he can be 0-6, but as long as he's getting money off of his Q, off of his barrels, he'll eventually scale, and he's going to put a lot of damage as they kind of continue to roam around the map.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now I really
it's
like
fascinating just repeatedly watching and seeing what's the
Of
changes
course.
that they're making.
Yeah, I know. It's always nice to see how many changes have gone through in this game, especially over the past few years. This, as an old guy like me, this map in particular, and I'll actually finish that in just a moment, as Leona from UAlbany jumps on, but Ash is fine. But anyways, if you're an old guy like me, and you remember the old Summoner's Rift, this is still the new Summoner's Rift, except for this map is currently 6 years old, and that's just incredible. But we see a pretty nice Dragon Skirmish start out. Both top laners are kind of staying top lane. Camille does have teleport advantage, but the Leona ends up jumping in. Camille is now teleporting in from Sacred Heart. Ooh, but Orianna gets a nice ultimate in there as she kills off the Leona. Lilia kiting back, but she can't necessarily do it. Camille jumping in, avoiding a lot of the hits from the Lucian, but Lucian is taking over because it is Lucian and it is prior 15 minutes. Oh, but UAlbany answers back with a couple of kills, and we actually see a 3-for-2 in favor of UAlbany. So even though the early game hasn't been going their way, they're able to get off a lot of really good kills here. And, you know, take a small gold lead, at least at the 7-minute mark.
So what difference can we see by taking that Dragon Skirmish that you mentioned? Is that a lot of gold that we see from that fight? What difference does that make in the game?
Right, so we end up seeing UAlbany taking that fight 3-2, as I was saying, and a lot of the gold ended up going on to the Lucian in the mid lane there for Good Ken. And Lucian's a really early game champion, so he's always trying to get as much of an advantage as he can before his damage kind of starts to fall off or before his kit kind of falls off. So that was really, really big. He ended up getting, 2 kills. He has 2 kills, 2 assists now, and so that's really, really key for that Lucian on top of everything. So, but no one ended up taking Dragon. UAlbany is now rotating to it, where the Lilia and the Lucian are collapsing. Jhin and Leona were able to push in, so Ashe and Thresh can't really answer this too well. Camille diving against the Gangplank, and he's going to die again. Oh, he ends up killing Hecarim as Hecarim just kind of botches that entire tower dive, getting way too greedy and just unable to fully finish off the Gangplank. This is disastrous for Sacred Heart as UAlbany takes the dragon and continues their gold lead.
So Aaron, let me ask you, when do we start seeing the tables really turn? How late in the game, how much gold is the difference that is, it's clearly in the bag for someone?
It takes a good amount of time to kind of really, see the gold leads change. So, I mean, if it's like a 2,000 gold lead at 10 minutes, then, whoever has that gold lead, that's kind of a major, major difference. But 2,000 at 40 minutes, 30 minutes, that's not too much of a change. So it really depends on the game time. We're only at an 800 gold lead. That's about 2, maybe 3 kills at this point in one direction or the other. So right now it is still a very close game, but it is going very much in favor of UAlbany. So. They do have a little bit more late game insurance with the Gangplank, with the Lilia too, just kind of putting out the DPS. But that Orianna is famous for her team fighting ability, where she can definitely just overtake a game or overtake a big team fight. Things change, but Leona ends up ulting in on the Ashe. Lilia ulting too, putting her to sleep. But now Leona in trouble. She's getting flayed. She's getting hooked back. She's getting killed by the turret, but that force shot from Jhin, 1, 2, 3, bop, as Hecarim goes down. Again, so 1 for 1, not too bad. Support for jungle, so a little bit in favor of UAlbany. as they now start to take a few more plates under the turret. To explain to viewers at home as well, too, just talking a little bit about those turret plates. You know, those turret plates are only up for the first 14 minutes of the game, as teams take them down one by one. The person who takes it down, they end up getting a pretty substantial amount of gold, which allows some teams to kind of early snowball. Plates were actually introduced only a year ago at this point now, which is pretty incredible, as they've had a really substantial effect on the gameplay. And to talk about turret plates too, even though Sacred Heart had a really good early lead, especially with the ganks on Hecarim and especially with the Thresh coming in, they actually currently have no plates to U Albany's 3. So U Albany's got a pretty nice little pocket of gold on top of that. Pretty much their entire lead right now comes down to those turret plates when you actually look at it. So, or it can be kind of boiled down to that. Even though Lucian has about a 10 CS lead, Gangplank has a small CS lead. They're pretty much even, as well as bot lane. So it's very, very even right now. The main discrepancies that you'd be able to see is about a 15 CS lead in the mid lane, which is expected. It's Lucian, it's early game. But you also have, you know, that plate difference that U Albany has. So they're able to kind of, that's pretty much where all of their gold is coming in, even though, you know, right now it's 7-6 in kills. Right now, Sacred Heart, their whole goal, slow down the game a little bit, wait for the Orianna to get a little bit more farm, wait for her to get her first item so that she can have a really, really big pop. But actually, looking at her item choices, she's going a little bit of a mix of the early game Orianna that we might see and a late game Orianna with the Tear of the Goddess, with the Luden's Echo. And so that's going to be a little interesting as we come down to the middle team fight here, or the next team fight around the big objective, which again, Dragon is spawning in about another minute. So she's not going to be as strong as Sacred Heart might want her to be. However, we're going to see just how, you know, how Game Fnatic can pull off this fight.
So is the dragon is the same dragon that we fought before?
So, just to even talk a little bit about the dragon, so you have two random dragons in the early game. The first one was a Wind Drake. The next one is a Infernal Drake here. And so that means that once this Infernal Drake dies, the dragons that are going to be for the rest of the game are either going to be Ocean or Mountain. Mountain gives you tankiness and resistances, which would be great for either team. And Ocean gives you health regeneration, which would be fantastic for Sacred Heart, but not necessarily as much for U Albany. The reason for that is U Albany's team is very much about kind of damage over time, whereas Sacred Hearts is definitely around bursting people down and getting picks. We'll see another fight here just around the dragon. Sacred Heart has a good amount of vision down already, but U Albany is being a little aggressive as they try to clear out vision in their first here to this Drake, and in a good position to try and take it. If they end up taking this Drake, you know, that's going to give them a lot of extra damage in this early game.
Seems like we lost Aaron for a brief moment.
Oh, there we go. I think I'm back. Oh, and of course we end up missing a huge fight, but currently it's going as Lucian ends up ulting. Camille's in there, but she ends up falling asleep. She ends up getting exhausted. Now she has to flash out as Lucian kind of comes in. Jhin chasing them down, looking for the Orianna, looking for the Thresh as it kind of goes in between the two turrets. Camille running away, trying to lifesteal off the wave. Lucian flashing in, and he ends up getting the kill onto the Orianna as Jhin even flashes in and gets the kill onto Thresh. Disastrous for Sacred Heart now as we look at a 1.4k gold lead. And on top of all of that, U Albany took Dragon. So this is not looking good at all for Sacred Heart. Still winnable, but definitely not looking great here, Jag.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely saw from that last fight. I mean, the amount of power, the amount of damage being funneled, it just seemed like panic, quite frankly, from Sacred Heart.
Absolutely. This is not turning into as close to the game as the early game would have, predicted for us, especially after Hecarim had 2 really successful ganks. He hasn't really been able to find anything else after that. So.
Right, Albany did manage to turn it around a good bit and put it in their favor, but I think, like you said, it is still anybody's game, but we're going to need to see some bigger plays, something that's going to turn this game around a bit more for Sacred Heart.
Especially as we kind of just look down the tables on Albany. Yes, we can give the Gangplank a pass. He died twice early. He got that early kill onto the Hecarim. But, 8 assists is pretty substantial. 8 out of the 11 kills. That's really, really good turnaround from Kafu. But the ones I want to point out the most are the Lucian and the Jhin, the 2 carries right now for Albany. 4-1, 4-0. That's really, really big as well. As Hecarim ends up getting caught out, pulled in the Leona ultimate. He ends up getting slept. Now he's in the Gangplank ultimate, and Lilia ends up taking that kill off of her passive. So, again, that's kind of the power of the Albany comp. As Leona ends up getting her E, then her R, then Jhin can root that up, then Gangplank drops down, Lilia's coming from nowhere, and they all just dogpile onto a single champion. So. This is definitely, turning into kind of a one-sided match as it now turns to about 3k gold lead at 17 minutes. And this is interesting, too, as well. 17 minutes, neither team had been looking for the Rift Herald here, and then finally Lilia ends up taking it right before it ends up going away. And Lucian just pops out of a bush and pops down the Orianna. That's a 5-in-1 Lucian, folks. That's not. that's what Lucian does. He got ahead early. He's been building up his Mana Moon. He's got a BF sword, and you have this Orianna that's got this Laking build that she hasn't really been able to go against. And again, here's Leona just all inning against the Ashe, and Jhin just pops her. Ooh, and he actually ends up not killing the Ashe, and the Leona the Knight doesn't end up getting the kill, and the Leona ends up dying to the Ashe. So that's a really nice kill there, back in favor for Sacred Heart. A nice little consolation prize, we'll say.
Well put.
But right now, we also have a 2-tower lead for Albany. No towers for Sacred Heart. So again, another little tidbit of gold there that kind of goes in their favor. But, Albany is playing to their comp strengths. Leona is roaming around with one of the 2 AD carries here, in Jhin and Lucian. And, as they're just kind of roaming around, they're able to all-in them, or they're able to just kind of put a decent amount of pressure onto whoever they're fighting in this instance. Here, Sacred Heart slowing down the game a little bit, just trying to get as much farm, as Lucian now has 5 kills, a 30 CS lead against Game Fnatic. This is that's a lot. We'll put it that way. Even if we take a look at the gold, Lucian alone has 2,500 more gold than the Orianna, which is pretty much all to half of the gold lead that we see coming out from Albany. Yeah, with about a 3k gold lead, 3.5 gold lead, and Lucian has 2.5 of that. That just kind of shows you that early game prowess of Lucian. So, not only that, Lucian now has 2.5 items. He doesn't have to be afraid of a Camille at all, which would normally be able to blow him up. And this is not looking good for Sacred Heart, especially now. But we see a death sentence onto Lucian, but he ends up dashing away. Ashe arrow goes wide as Hecarim goes in with the ultimate, but he gets stunned up by the Leona ultimate. Camille jumping in, but Lilia ends up getting her sleep. Gangplank goes in, he ends up getting that kill. Orianna Ball does barely anything as Lilia ends up swiping and taking that kill, and Gangplank cleans up Jhin also ends up taking that fight on the bot side there too. And so now, Albany, free dragon here, 5,000 gold lead, 20 minutes into the game, it's not looking pretty.
That was an absolute slaughter.
Yeah, that was not great. So, even looking at that team... Sorry, go ahead.
We were in a fight where it looked like Albany or Sacred Heart stood a chance to get a pick there or two, and out from the bushes, out from the sides, Albany pulled up with a whole crew of people that just made that fight an absolute slaughter.
They, having a really good death sentence onto the Lucian, but it was not, he ended up taking it and saying, not today, and just being able to dash out of all of the death sentences. And Jhin was able to kite around those fights on the side really, really nicely. And then, again, once they just kind of ended up going in, you don't ever want to be able to see the chance to 2v3. And Lilia and Gangplank just ended up taking out the Ashe, Thresh, and the Orianna no problem, as just Camille was on her own taking out the Lucian, or ended up getting a kill on the Lucian, so that's a nice bit of gold in her favor. But again, the Jhin was able to just take over, kill the Camille, and that was perfectly fine.
Yeah, we see almost a 5,000 gold lead here now from Albany, and a 6-kill lead. They've got 4 turrets to Sacred Heart's 0. It's not looking great for Sacred Heart this late in the game.
And now Albany is just looking to make a play onto the Drake. See where they go. So this is really, really good and kind of a good marquee. When you see these teams, they know that, they're currently ahead. They have, 5,000 gold, 5,500 gold lead. They place their vision down on the Baron. They have that pink ward right into that Baron brush. And now it just kind of comes down to what solution and the Jhin going to be able to do here, as they are able to just kind of carry Albany forward. Again, looking at that Gangplank, he died twice early, and he's now 3-2 and 11. So he has only died those 2 times early. He ended up getting 3 kills. He ended up getting 11 assists out of the, he's involved in 14 out of the 18 kills that Albany has. And Lilia just solos the Ashe, hits the Swirl Seed from downtown, able to then just slow him down, take a huge amount of damage, and there's nothing that Sacred Heart really could do there.
Right, that was just dirty.
So, fortunate. And even, looking at these score lines too, looking at the Leona, even though she's 0-5 and 6, she's doing her job. She's engaging, and she, as the main engage for Albany, she's just able to take these fights, push them out. As now we kind of see Baron coming in. Are we going to get a steal from the Hecarim? He doesn't get it, and now he's just going to die. Sometimes you got to go for those Hail Mary plays, but at the same time, it's rough. The Hecarim doesn't even have his Triforce, and it is 23 minutes. If I had a Hecarim in my game, 23 minutes in, he's got a Triforce, he's got the Balmy Cinder, or he's got his Cinder Hulk as well, he wouldn't be doing good. And he doesn't even have the Triforce yet. That's really, really not good. So, unfortunate game here coming out from the jungler on the side of Sacred Heart.
So what we just saw was him trying to sweep in and steal that at the last second, correct?
Yep. So that's kind of one of the big things too, is when you have the 2 junglers have the summoner spell called Smite, and so it's able to do true damage and a large burst of damage to any of the monsters that you see in the jungle. So Baron Nashor there, for example. However, you typically want to take it, and if you jump in, you want to take it only if it's a 50-50. The way that you can kind of tell if it's a 50-50 is if both the junglers, one, they don't have some extra mechanic where they do more damage to monsters. So like Nunu has his Devour, and Cho'Gath has his ultimate as well, where they do bonus damage to those minions. Then it's not a 50-50. However, it's also not a 50-50 if you have 2 levels or more on the enemy jungler. And unfortunately, the Lilia did have 2 levels on the Hecarim. It's level 13 to level 11. That's a Hecarim that is behind in golds, behind in kills, behind in items is gonna do that. He's just gonna be dead weight, sadly. Camille, though, jumping in onto the gangplank here. You know, it was looking good for the gangplank, and he ends up clutching it. Oh, that is what Tilt is made of, Jag.
Oh.
is not fun. As UAlbany's going to look to close out this game pretty cleanly. You know, 22-12, 10,000 gold lead, ends up taking the inhibitor. They're going to rotate, take the mid inhibitor, play this game by the books. They could pull the gangplank up. Camille's still dead for another 15 seconds. They at least could get a Nexus turret here easily. With Baron-empowered minions, this might end up being the game.
Yeah, by the books is right. I think we're just waiting for the end now. We're at a point where the tables have tilted so aggressively in favor for UAlbany. It was a really great play from UAlbany, though. Overall, the way that they played the game, the times that they knew when to push, when to group up, it seemed like they just did it better, knew it better than Sacred Heart throughout the game.
Absolutely. You know, and so a couple things that I'd like to see probably in this next draft. Again, Kafu showed, you know, a little bit of redemption there, as again, he had only been showing 3 champions throughout this tournament. He had Ornn, Shen, and Mordekaiser, and Sacred Heart ended up banning all 3 of them to put him onto something else. He shows the gangplank 4-2-14. That's a really good performance out of him. Again, that Lucian mid to Sacred Heart, UAlbany has been known for that Lucian mid. That's kind of been a really big champion for them as well. 8-2-8, nothing to sneeze at there. You know, really, really major carry as well. Having the second most damage in the game, the most damage even going to the gangplank, who did get behind that early. So, you know, this is turning out to be an interesting matchup, as again, you know, Sacred Heart just kind of coming up from the depths, beating SUNY Canton, beating Stockton even in a 2-0 fashion. This was, you know, it was an expected result, but not as expected, if you will. So.
For sure, yeah. I mean, that history will affect the future. We see time and time again.
And it looks like the teams are rearing to go. They're already starting to load up into game 2. You know, no time to really discuss, you know, what might have went wrong. Again, to even look about what Sacred Heart probably should do for next game, they might want to remove the Lucian early, especially from the drafting pool. Again, remove the Mordekaiser, because we've seen what Kafu can actually do on the Mordekaiser. And again, you know, just try and get them onto something not necessarily as comfortable. Even looking at UAlbany, the Lilia is a really big comfort pick. The Lucian is an obvious comfort pick. But now that you're on blue side, you know, you can ban the Lucian, take the Orianna, put him onto a tertiary, such as Syndra, such as Corki, such as Zoe. You know, a couple of the other champions that we've seen him play. And, you know, if you're putting him onto something AP in the mid lane, UAlbany's shown they want something AD in the jungle, which is just good drafting in general. That'll put them on a Hecarim, on a Lee Sin, on a Jarvan, and you can try and counter that with, say, Graves or something along those lines. So again,
if I'm Sacred Heart right now, I'm definitely looking to make some serious changes to the lineup. I don't know about you, some hero pick changes, and ideally, like you said, you're gonna have to ban something, a few different picks to get them out of the pool before the match here, to not have to go against the same champions that you know that UAlbany is comfortable with.
So. Again, you know, just to reiterate a couple of things, I want to see Game Fanatic on something that he can, you know, either bully or, you know, go even with Good Ken on, or even, you know, if they felt that was a little bit of a mismatchup, you can pick the Orianna early, ban the Lucian, put him on something a little less comfortable. And then again, even looking down into that bot lane, you know, Jhin was popping off. He actually didn't die that entire match against Sacred Heart there. You know, and your backs are against the wall. You got to pull out all your stops. You got to look to have a good draft here. You know, both teams ended up having a really interesting draft where if it went late, you know, there wasn't a lot of AP, Albany probably had a little bit of an advantage with the Lilia and the damage over time there. But when you actually look at it, it really could have gone the way of Sacred Heart had they not been or not lose the early game as hard as they did. So,
right, I totally agree. It was quick to. Well, initially we saw two. I think it was two quick picks from Sacred Heart, and then an immediate turnaround as Albany just started savagely putting themselves in the driver's seat and pushing back Sacred Heart.
And again, for all those that are watching out there, this is now going to be game 2 of the ECAC qualifier, Fall Invitational qualifier. That's kind of a mouthful to say. And so we'll be kind of getting in there in just a moment as the players are taking a quick break. But even just to kind of talk about that, stick around after these games. We're going to try and get an interview with some of the players, at least from Sacred Heart. And then we can talk about a little bit of the matchup that is going to be on this channel as well, ECAC_esports, as well as some of the ESTV channels where you could be watching this right now. So again, stick around for that. We'll be having that later game happen around 7 p.m. as well, where Johnson Wales will play the winner of this matchup, which is looking like to be U Albany.
At the moment, yes.
Alrighty. So as we have that quick break, we are going to move the stream to We'll Be Right Back. And so we'll see everyone in a moment. Alrighty, everyone. Now, welcome back as we get into Game 2 of the ECAC Riot Fall 2020 Invitational Qualifier. As we, just finished Game 1 there, where UAlbany ended up beating Sacred Heart. Not only that, but, the teams have now... Interesting. I'm just looking at the chat. But our teams have now switched sides as we are getting into that pick and ban phase. So again, we want to see some different drafting here come out from Sacred Heart. They banned that Mordekaiser, which I think is a really great ban. As again, UAlbany has kind of shown that they are mastery on that champion. Graves again into this pick. So, are into the ban for UAlbany. Again, nothing has changed so far now from Game 1, which isn't a great sign for Sacred Heart. Wait here as the clock kind of counts down just a little bit. We get the Lucian. Excellent. Good. All right, so we won't
we
be seeing
definitely wanted
Lucian.
to see that band.
Yes. Right. You won't see a Lucian this game, and they end up countering with Caitlyn. Also really good, as again, it takes away kind of the two premier early game AD carries from the bot lane. Again, Caitlyn, Lucian, Jhin being up too. Senna is still up. Like, it's not all of them, but those are kind of your big name ones that you hear a lot. Callista's still up too. The Leona ban. Now, again, we looked at Leona's stats last game. She was like 0-6-6, 0-6-7 when she ended the game. But, Sacred Heart saying we don't want to play against that. And again, UAlbany banning out the Darius to round out everything. Great ban there, again, as Sacred Heart has kind of let the Darius carry them. And is this going to be a first pick Lilia? It is. First pick Lilia. That's interesting, especially because Lilia has been known to have a couple of counters in the jungle where it makes it a little bit difficult for her. If you get something early game that can just absolutely fight and dominate the Lilia, if you have early lanes against the Lilia, it makes it really difficult.
We saw that Lilia last game as well, right?
Yes, so we saw the Lilia though, but it was on UAlbany side. So we got to see Reaper's Lilia. Now we get to see Bardkai Lilia here. But we do get the Ornn for Kafu, so he picks it early here. Even though he had a fantastic performance on the Gangplank, he says, I don't want to get banned out again. And they take the Ornn early, so that should be really good. I'd love to see Drip Drop end up taking it here for the Shen, or taking a Shen here into that Ornn that's been kind of the premier counter for it. And they end up taking the Senna, which was also interesting too, especially because the Senna has a lot of counters as well, especially early game. Twitch is probably the biggest counter, but they do take the Braum. So, Braum is really interesting here, Jag, because Braum is not a laned counter to Ornn, because Braum's support and Ornn goes top. Okay? But Braum is a team fight counter to Ornn. Okay? Ornn has a big ability. He blows his horn. Giant ram comes down. He hits the ram back into the enemy team. Everyone gets knocked up. They all die. That's basically what he does. It's really cool. Ornn's one of my favorite characters. That's why I get excited talking about Ornn. But Braum, what he does is he puts up the door and he says nope. And so that ram hits the door and he doesn't get to bounce back into your team. So again, I want to see Major Binks, take control of this game as the Braum to do as much, or quell some of the issues that we've kind of seen Sacred Heart have in the game 1. But even to talk a little bit more, they rounded out Ashe. Ashe Braum is really great bot lane as well. They're great into Senna. Senna's typically a counter into Ashe, so I don't necessarily like this Ashe pick too much. But then we see a Lee Sin. Now, Lee Sin is great into Lilia, so already I'm kind of getting nervous for the Sacred Heart draft as, again, UAlbany has counter in the bot lane, counter in the jungle. They've taken away Orianna from Sacred Heart, so that's not a safe lane now for mid lane. Mid lane doesn't really get a safe matchup. They take away Sylas, they take away Syndra. So, and again, kind of interesting. I would love to see a Shen ban here on the side of UAlbany, but they end up, going with the Sylas. So where this goes. I wonder if they take away the Silas, if that kind of points to something a little more interesting that we could see. We could see, some really big ultimates like a Malphite, something like that. But we see a Tom. Have not seen a Tom in a long time here, Jack. He is not a champion that you typically pick. He is, he hasn't really been seeing a lot of play. With the Senna, kind of interesting too. You typically don't want to take too much into the Senna or anything like that, or the Senna, has a lot of decent matchups. So you don't necessarily need that Tom Kench. It'll be interesting for kind of the late game. And, I guess it does a little magic damage too, which Albany's lacking severely right now. But we do see a set, lock in here for Sacred Heart. The set, is pretty good into Ornn. The set has always been really, really solid. And you end up having the Rise too. So they have the late game. They're giving the counter pick. They're getting the counter pick here for the mid lane. And yeah, it's just going to be a Cassiopeia. That's going to be really bad for Sacred Heart as they lock it in, So we have essentially. So there's some hope. Let me be positive here. Let me not be such a Debbie Downer. Okay, stay positive. Lee Sin, Cassiopeia is a really great matchup versus kind of the Lilia Rise. The Cassiopeia can take some magic resistance early. That's actually kind of more negative. Anyways, let's talk about the Set Ornn matchup. Set usually does really well into Ornn, especially if the set goes for the Bork build early. That's typically a good matchup for the set, or it gives him a lot of damage output against the Ornn. The Ornn matchup, if he's not getting supported a lot by the Lee Sin, that can also be a little bit dangerous. But Cassiopeia...
You mentioned that Braum is going to be able to help shut down that Ornn, correct?
Yep. So the Braum, that is a really good, team fighting portion of that. Braum can stop the Ornn ulti. He can... No, he doesn't stop this. Actually, I'm not sure of that interaction of the Senna ulti yet. I'm not 100% sure, so I won't say if it's yes or no. He should stop some of the damage, but I don't know if he stops it from going through. He might actually, but we'll kind of talk about that. But again, as we're loading up here, I'm not a huge fan of the Sacred Heart draft. Again, they countered themselves with the Ashe. They countered themselves with the Lilia early. They really only have the set lane to work through. And again, late game to late game, Cassiopeia is going to be able to put out a good amount of damage versus the Rise. And Rise can be matched by an Ornn early as long as, he's going to go for that Abyssal Mask plus the Sunfire Cape build, as all Ornns typically do. And if he does that, he can match the Ornn. But on the side of Sacred Heart, who's going to match a Cassiopeia if she tries to look to split push? Not only that, but just sheer amount of DPS coming out from a Cassiopeia. It'll be an interesting game. I'm excited to see if Sacred Heart can pull out a win here, but I'm not as optimistic as I was about game one.
Is Cassiopeia more of an early game, late game, or is it just a balance of just mad damage all throughout?
So Cassiopeia is very much a champion that does late game damage. Just as the game goes further and further, she gets more cooldown, she gets more items. So Cassiopeia, a while back, they made it where she doesn't have to buy boots. And after, I think it's like level 6 or level 7, she essentially gets, a free pair of boots with her passive. And then at about a level 11, she starts surpassing in movement speed pretty much any of the boots, like Boots of Swiftness, any of like the really big movement speed boosts. So, she's really mobile. Phase Rush 2 on top of her Celerity as Runes and Masteries. It makes it so that when she does a big burst full of damage, she can just kind of take someone down. Again, she's a little bit weak in that early game. She's really susceptible to ganks, but so is Rise. Rise is another champion where he puts out a lot of burst damage late. He puts out a lot of DPS late. But in that early game, he's really, really easy to gank, easy to kill, and easy to kind of overcome. So it'll really kind of come down to some of the synergy that these teams play and where they can go.
Right, that'll be really interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, I sounds like the best bet here for Sacred Heart is a quick lead at the beginning. some bold plays, maybe some quick picks, get themselves a gold lead, and then we'll see a bit of a snowball from them, ideally leading into their win. Other than that, you seem pretty dead set that we're going to see a lot more damage coming out of UAlbany.
You know, this game, it's not looking great. It's not looking great for Sacred Heart, just through draft. And I mean, you know, it always kind of depends. Even, you know, looking at some of the other teams too, or some of the other teams I've worked with in the past, we've had bad drafts and we've definitely won the games. That's for sure. You know, you can't just put everything onto the draft, but just kind of looking at that initial draft, I am really scared. Just kind of some of the champion orders. Like if you wanted to first pick the Lilia, or you felt the Lilia was a problem, you could have banned it instead of the Leona and tried to first pick Leona. You could have, you know, given up the Lilia and taken something that invades a little bit more into what similar to what UAlbany did here. That was kind of the big thing with the Hecarim Lilia matchup, is that Hecarim he didn't ever really invade the Lilia or try and fight the Lilia early, and then, you know, once he got behind, he was behind, even though he got 2 really early kills. So anyways, we are loaded up. We are ready to play. Game 2, match point for UAlbany. Winner goes and gets a qualifying seed for the Nationals tournament for the Riot Fall Invitational. Losers, fall season ends. All right. Again, we'll be seeing another game later where the winners of this game will play at 7 p.m. against Johnson & Wales University. The winner of that will be the 1 seed from the ECAC. The loser will end up being the 2 seed from the ECAC. Both teams, though, for the later game at 7 p.m., are going to be in that fall invitational, the Nationals tournament. So both teams just kind of setting up here. Junglers going to mirror each other in their clears. Lilia starting red. Lee Sin starting on his blue buff here. And so I'm going to be interested to see where each of the junglers where each of the junglers for Sacred Heart and UAlbany, what they're going to do in the early game. Where are they going to look to gank? Where are they going to look to go early?
So we're seeing both teams here going to get some quick gold in the jungle.
Yep, just kind of farming down, you know, a little bit early game, just kind of handshaking it as normal. So, But I'll be keeping an eye too on some of the gold leads, especially coming out, as again we did see a really big gold lead go in the side of Good Ken from UAlbany in that last matchup without a lot of jungle pressure. Set ends up pulling in the Ornn, getting a good amount of damage, but you know, nothing too much, or not a lot of action coming early, which is expected from both of these, as kind of the junglers look to just do their clear. Lilia having a really interesting clear path there. I'm not sure I like that, where they went red into Raptors into Krugs. Typically that's just not as optimal, right? Because that means that he's going to probably give up pressure on both of these Scuttlecrabs. But we look around as Lee Sin makes a movement to the top side of the map. He looked to rotate down, took a peek, and decided, nope, I'm going to go back and do some more farming. So, but even with that initial clear, Lilia's clear speed is just absolutely obnoxious, and you can even see she's starting essentially a 1 camp lead over the Lee Sin. Lee Sin finishing up his Raptors. Lilia, and just like that, she's able to actually out-rotate Reaper in this matchup, and she's going to be the first on the Scuttlecraft, which is nice. The Ashe does get the stun on the Tom, but not too much damage, and we see a fight in the river as Ryze is first to roam up, and he's going to end up dealing a decent amount of damage to the Lee Sin, and he gets it. Sacred Heart with the first blood, with a nice gold swing there as well. Beautifully played by Game Fnatic. He pushed up. He knew Lilia was going to go and compete for the Scuttlecrab. He knew that, and I'll get to that point in a minute. And both them use flashes. Ryze gets out. 1-0, first blood. That's really, really great. Saw Lilia was trying to go for the Scuttlecrab, was able to push in his lane, was able to get to the Lee Sin first, was able to make it into a 2v1 situation, and just able to take the first blood. So even to talk about that Rise and that Cassiopeia matchup, you know, yes, both of them are late game champions, and typically Cassiopeia wins that matchup, but not if Rise is going to get ahead. So 1 kill, you know, not the end of the world. Even CS, fine. But we'll kind of see, you know, where this will go. We're seeing Albany kind of push in bot lane. They're really, really safe. Lee Sin was able to take the bot side scuttle safely because he didn't have to fight the Lilia. They have a ward there in Tribrush, so they're able to just kind of push in, keep this Ashe under the turret, and that's kind of the power of Senna is, you know, again, Senna is a known counter into the Ashe, and that makes it really difficult. And just Ornn and Set just kind of trading here. Ornn is a little bit low on his mana, so he's going to want to look to go back. But Set, waiting for his rotations to come back up. And he's not going to be able to kind of get that. Ornn is going to back off a little bit. Going to go build his items in the brush. Comes out with a Thorn Mail. I know the viewers can't see my face there, Jag, but... Alright, Ornn players out there, you're against a Set, you don't build Thornmail. Even so. Even if you're having struggles against... That was an interesting flash from the Lilia. I mean, just staying safe, that's fine. But, again, going to those Ornn players, again, all those Ornn players out there, you don't build Thornmails first. Even if, you know, you're losing to the Set matchup, okay? Again, Set, a lot of his damage comes out from his Qs. If you really feel like you're losing that matchup, go to your chainmail, go into a Ninja Tabbies, right? If you feel like you can't get out of its W, use the Ninja Tabbies. Your E is on a your dash is on a shorter cooldown than the Set W. You can always E out of it as well, unless the Set is maxing it, and even so, it's a huge cooldown as well. So you can always get out of that one. But yeah, no, never build Thornmail first. That's what we're getting out of this.
So is Thornmail better late game, or is it just not a good option overall?
Thornmail is really good if you're against champions that are constantly dealing damage against you. Like, yes, if there was like a Vayne top or a Lucian top into Ornn, you can build Thornmail or something like that. But Ornn really, really needs that Bomby Cinder to start helping him clear waves. If he's getting pushed under tower by the Set, or he's taking a lot of damage from the Set. And the Abyssal Mask, because Ornn's passive, he upgrades 2 of his items to be stronger versions of the items. You know, it makes it where no other champions can buy those items, only Ornn can get them, because he's supposed to be like a masterwork blacksmith in the lore. And so, with that being said, you want to make sure that you can focus on 2 items that your Ornn can upgrade early, and that's why you always see the Abyssal Mask builds and the Sunfire Cape, because they give him the most durability and the most... It gives him what he needs a lot in those matchups. The Sunfire Cape helps him clear waves, and the Abyssal Mask helps him with his mana problems, as well as helping him deal even more damage with his Bellowing Breath. So
it's obviously really odd that we're not seeing that from Albany today.
Right. And Albany, with a nice rotation here onto the Dragon, they just kind of get there first over SHU, and they catch them, you know, with their monitors off there. And now it's a good fight. The Ashe ends up getting exhausted. She gets pulled back from the Tahm Kench fight. Tahm Kench ends up slowing him down, and Lee Sin coming in here to turn this into a 3v2. If he lands the kick, does he go in? His body's telling him yes, but his mind told him no. And he doesn't end up taking that kick in. Again, so a good fight there by Albany, just kind of showing that power of what the Senna can do. I'm starting to like the Tahm pick a little bit more, too. Not necessarily as a keep the Senna safe pick that you normally see Tahm, but actually as an aggressive pick, which fits into Yox's playstyle, as we've seen with the Leona and with a couple of the other champions that he's picked throughout this tournament. Typically, Tahm Kench, you can eat one of your allies and run away from the safety. Run away to keep them safe. However, in the same instance, if you hit an enemy champion 3 times with Tahm Kench, you can then eat them and deal a good amount of damage, and that's what we saw Yox do in that fight, after the Senna got a nice double root onto the Braum Ashe. So we're just seeing kind of both teams farm it out. Again, Rise and Cassiopeia keeping it very even in the mid lane. Both of them getting their tier stacks early, or tiers stacked up early. Rise with an early kill down, and even CS, the Rise is kind of winning that matchup, which makes it a little bit nice. Set, though, having a monstrous 20 CS lead pretty much over the Thorn is, even with that, even with the Thornmail, which the Thornmail should help him against the Set, but typically you want to build your Ninja Tabbies early, because the Ninja Tabbies are actually going to do a lot more to Set, because it is base damage. Typically, the reason that you want to start buying your Thornmail, and I should say he has a Bramble Vest, not Thornmail yet, just to correct myself, but Bramble Vest only builds into Thornmail. Anyways, with Bramble Vest, you're typically using that so that the enemy champion deals damage back to themselves. Essentially, Thornmail will reflect some of the damage onto the enemy champion. So again,
that would be better against smaller damage rather than larger damage.
Right. In other words, characters that want to hit you a lot. Set doesn't really want to hit you a lot. He presses his Q, he runs at you, he bop, W, E, and then he runs away like a coward, right? If you're close to dead, he's going to pull you back, but we're going to look at this fight. Braum ends up ulting in, pulling away the UAlbany team. Lee Sin, mind telling him yes, and yes, he connects and get that kill onto the Ashe. Really good by UAlbany and kind of rotating down to that early game Lee Sin that, he's so well known for as a champion. So really good gank there by UAlbany. Again, just using the power of Senna over Ashe. A really, like I said in the early, Senna is a known counter for Ashe. If you're going to pick Ashe, right, you got to ban, or you usually want to ban Senna. Typically, you see Ashe as a Caitlyn counter. And again, the Senna was already picked, and Sacred Heart opted in. Andrew opted into this matchup. So I don't really like that pick, but Ornn dealing a good amount of damage onto the Set. Massive shield from the Set. Ornn's looking to go in. He's going to get this kill. And, oh gosh, disastrous. Set ends up flashing for it too. Rise hops over the wall though, get one back for Sacred Heart. Game Fnatic doing well, looking to bait out this Lee Sin, and he gets completely juked away. It could have been 2 kills for this, or 3 kills for this Rise, but instead, so just to recap, disastrous in the top lane for Drip Drop. Ends up flashing away from the Ornn, even though he was going to die. No matter what, he needed to flash way earlier. He needed to flash either the ultimate from the Ornn or try and, do his best to sidestep it. And again, but then a really good counter gank from the Lilia for the Rise there, just kind of coming in and giving the Rise a little bit more power. So last game we saw good Ken from UAlbany kind of carry. Can we see Game Fnatic from Sacred Heart carry? We're approaching that 13-minute mark where plates are going to fall at 14 minutes, but even just to kind of recap some of the plates, Sacred Heart does have a plate this game around. So last game they had no plates, they do have 1 plate. Versus UAlbany, who ends up having 3 plates here. So that's a nice little gold in the pocket for Sacred Heart. For UAlbany, who's got a few more plates against them. And that's where, you can kind of see a little bit of the gold and why it's still as close as it is, even though Sacred Heart has a 20 CS lead against Ornn, and pretty much even the rest down the bracket there. So again, just that first blood kind of holding up for some of their gold. Sacred Heart able to rotate onto the Rift Herald. Oh, but they don't place it down, and the turret, is it going to die? It's not going to get, it doesn't get the charge. No, that's really awful for Sacred Heart. They placed it too far back. The Lee Sin was able to rotate and just bop the eye twice. That, you hate to see it. Again, that Rift Herald is really great. Could have really swung a heftier lead for Sacred Heart right before they take this dragon. Honestly, just the Bard Kai dropping it down a little bit too early and unable to get that plate. They needed to kind of shove up together, look to get that plate right before the 14-minute mark as a group. And again, now UAlbany doesn't need to respond to a Rift Herald. They already did it, and there goes Drake number 2. So again, complete Drake control over these past 2 games from UAlbany. you know, 2 Drakes this game, 3 Drakes last game. It is an Infernal Drake this game as well, so that's going to be really important for that Rise and that Cassiopeia matchup. Again, whoever can get those Infernal Drakes is going to be able to kind of pump out some of the damage and swing the matchup a little bit in their favor. And it's looking to be UAlbany that's going to get that matchup, or get that nice little gold, or sorry, that nice little bonus from the Drakes. Braum stepping up, hitting a Q onto the Senna, and there's the power of Tahm Kench eating the Senna. No arrow for you. And now the Ashe arrow is down for a couple minutes at least.
Yeah, we're seeing a fairly even match this far. We're about 15 minutes in. And you did mention those plates. Have those plates already been destroyed?
Yes, plates are now down, and again, Sacred Heart, UAlbany able to just kind of come in again with that big counter matchup. The Senna set ended up dropping in the Tahm Kench and dropping him down, but both top laners ended up TPing into this fight. Now Set can't get away, he's going to go down to the Cassiopeia. And 3 for 1 in favor of UAlbany, as again, just Andrew from Sacred Heart stepping way too far up on the Ashe. They already had pushed the Senna and the Tahm Kench under their turret. I don't know what he was doing as Ashe. You can't step that far up against the Tahm and the Senna. Lilia pulling in for the sleep, ended up getting her Q down, getting a bunch of damage, killing the Ornn, but going to trade her life to a Cassiopeia. Again, first kill for Cassiopeia, so that's kind of nice at least, but, you know, was that worth? Probably not.
Right. Getting in there, getting that Ornn on one hand. You get him out of the fight for a little bit, but all you did was give that Cassiopeia a little bit more XP and gold. Put them ahead of your mid laner, right?
Exactly, yep. So, and again, Cassiopeia with gold, you know, supposed to be winning this Rise matchup. And, you know, Game Fnatic 1 doing a good job against Good Ken in the mid lane there, but it's getting to the point where Cassiopeia is going to take over the game a little bit against the Rise. Both teams kind of looking to reset now. UAlbany taking the gold swing in their lead. Not by much. A couple hundred gold. Still anyone's game. Ashe stepping up too far again. And getting a root, but oh, they might be able to trade this onto Tahm Kench as he's now slowed, but he's just dealing way too much damage. And with Reaper coming down, they weren't able to kind of close out that particular kill. He's now sneaking in the bush there with the Rift Herald. Now, hopefully Reaper is going to be able to place that Rift Herald down. It looks like he's looking to get that last little bit of the bot lane turret for his team. So. But again, just Andrew stepping a little too far up. You know, even though you have Braum that can block a lot of those things, Braum blocks damage, not CC. So we did see that he does block the Senna ultimate. Oh, and Tahm Kench just absolutely caught out there. Ashe arrow used, Lilia sleep used as well. Root from Rise, you know, I'm not really sure what Yax was doing there. It might have been warding, might have been looking to clear wards, but gets picked off. So a little bit of life coming out from Sacred Heart, and a flash from Set on the side of Sacred Heart. Not necessarily what you want to see. Set should be winning that matchup. You can see he even built the Bork first. He can go into the Black Cleaver next as Set, and he should be able to do a decent amount of damage against this Ornn, but unfortunately, he's not able to kind of take over this matchup as much as he wants to. And now the Rift Herald dropped top. That top turret's going to drop in favor of UAlbany. Turret gold going to UAlbany. Tahm Kench ending up ulting, rotating onto the Braum, and just very cleanly done by the bot lane of UAlbany. 2 for nothing, just... Again, I'm not sure what Andrew and Major Binks are doing there, where they're just stepping way too far up. Andrew just getting caught out again and again on the Ashe. And Braum, he can save you, but he can't save you that much. Now the Rise ended up getting a kick onto the on Lee Sin getting the kick onto Rise, and Rise is going to get out through the ultimate. Boy, I botched that, but that's okay. And now Lilia looking to get a kill back, and they do onto the Lee Sin, and Lilia is able to fight, but we also got to fight in the top lane as the Cassiopeia is able to take down the turret and just kill the Set before she actually gets any damage done, and the Ashe arrow's late. as well. And so New Albany just kind of rotating and taking this game. It was 0-0 in towers. Now it's 3-1 in towers. A couple of extra kills. Lilia dies before the dragon goes down. Rise is rotating down. Going to die to this Tom Kench just because they can't get on him. And now, again, Rune TMC having one heck of a series. 5-0 on the Jhin. 5-0 now on the Senna. This man's unkillable. Now, U Albany able to rotate here onto this dragon. Gonna do their best to take this down. But it is not looking great for Sacred Heart. 3k, 20 minutes isn't insurmountable, but it is not great to see, especially when you have this Ornn. So again, Set is supposed to beat Ornn early. Set 1-3 versus Ornn's 2-1. Again, that being said, now it makes it really, really difficult now that the Ornn is getting some gold, and Set's gonna die here. Oh, nope, he ended up avoiding the miasma from the Cassiopeia, and he didn't end up needing that W, which was really good. So I thought he was going to go down, but fortunately he ends up staying alive. So it was Merc Treads that were keeping him there, so. Now, if Kafu can finish his Abyssal Mask before level 14, I will take back the Thorn Mail first, or Bramble Vest first item. Okay, because it did some work, especially once the Set just kind of got behind. The Set hasn't really been able to get any sort of kills, get any sort of gold, rotate on the map. That's again kind of the fault of the Set. His one TP ended up just him in a death and no assist from it. So again, typically with Set, you want to push that Ornn in, you want to rotate down into the mid lane and look to get some kills there. He wasn't really doing that. He was pushing the Ornn in and then just kind of trying to fight him and bully him. Again, that's just kind of that solo queue mentality. Now Rise able to deal a good amount of damage to the Cassiopeia. He's still in a point where, you know, he's still got 3 kills, and he's going to be able to do a lot of damage if he's able to kite around, but they both just kind of handshake and walk away. So, but Ornn, he's got to go one more level. He's got to finish this Abyssal Mask. If he can finish that and have the Bramble Vest, then, you know, that was really good and a good buy overall. He is able to really easily match this Set, but what I would like to see Sacred Heart do is rotate the Rise to be able to counter the matchups into the Ornn, just because he's not building as much magic resistance. But it looks like Ashe might be going down, but he ends up sidestepping the Senna ulti. Look, my Discord might have ended up crashing there just for a moment, but that is a-okay. Looks like I'm back now, but we ended up seeing another good fight as the Cassiopeia was able to rotate down, take out the Ashe, take out the Braum, get 2 kills, and now it's really not looking good because now the Cassiopeia is pretty much even with that Rise. If we even look at the gold lead or gold differential, Cassiopeia has 400 gold on top of the Rise. That's really not good for Sacred Heart, unfortunately. But even just kind of looking down the gold is a lot more evenly spread this game, but still 2,500 gold lead for the Senna, Rune TMC from U Albany, just kind of, you know, putting a lot of that gold lead on his back a little bit. About half of the gold lead for U Albany is just on that one character, so it makes it, again, another really tough game. Rise does have a fully stacked Rod of Ages, though, but Lee Sin looking to go in. Braum ends up getting Rune Ton lashed by the Tom Kench. He's able to get out, but Lee Sin looking back, maybe possibly to go in and kick him in, but he decides not to instead. As U Albany just looks to siege down all of these turrets. Their turrets barely touched this game. You know, last game Sacred Heart ended up getting at least 1 turret, if I remember correctly, but they might not even get a single turret this game, just as this game snowballs in favor of U Albany. And again, you know, I talked a little bit about the draft problems here. It might have just been a little bit of that, but at the same time, it makes it really, really tough where, you know, the matchups that you thought that you'd be able to do well in, or maybe take an even matchup, you're going 1-3 in those matchups. Cassiopeia is just free pushing as all 5 members from Sacred Heart are trying to answer in the bot lane, and Cassiopeia is on the inhibitor. And no one's there. Where's everyone? Where's the Rise? He's going to end up using his ultimate, try and get behind the Cassiopeia, he looks to Rook, he avoids the Cassiopeia ultimate, that's fantastic. Zed pulls him back, but they trade 1 for 1. And not only that, but you can see the power of Cassiopeia just in the late game and how she can deal with Ryze so well. And Zed, even though he's alting her in, he's suplexing the snake as much as he can, and it's not very effective, sadly.
Well, we did see a good trade there as Sacred Heart took out that Cassiopeia while they were just letting her take that first. What did you mention it was called?
Taking down the Ryze too. You know, again, it was just the Cassiopeia. You know, you don't really want to die late game as Cassiopeia, but you can just see that power as, you know, she took down the Ryze early.
Right, quick too.
Yeah. Makes that really difficult. We see a TP in from Sacred Heart. They're looking to contest this dragon. At least that's kind of one thing that I like to see. They're going to take it. They got the dragon. They just caught Albany sleeping at the wheel and were able to rotate and take that Infernal Drake. That's actually really important as well. That gives Ryze a little extra damage. He's got the Roa completed. Oh, but now the Lilia looks like she's going to get caught. She has to flash away. She tries to put them to sleep, but she just gets killed by the Lee Sin kick. So a good play into a really rough play by the Lilia. It's unfortunate for Sacred Heart. They look to have a little bit of life, and again, that's something that I like to see, is that even if you're losing, you still got to go for some of those really big plays. You know, the Ryze and everything like that should be kind of looking to farm up, but if you're able to take out those rotations and take a better rotation, then by all means, you really should look to do that. But again, Lily is dead. Albany is fully healthy because they didn't have to fight the Drake. This is their Baron, no steals, very easy, very straightforward, and they're going to be able to kind of do a 1-4 push, or maybe even a 1-3-1. We'll see what they kind of decide to go with. But it is looking almost certain that Albany will be winning this match and taking the last qualifying seed from the ECAC and probably play, you know, tonight at 7 p.m. against Johnson and Wales.
As Albany groups up in the top lane here and starts moving in, it's just looking like it's going to be an absolute slaughter like we saw last game.
And this one is even a little more one-sided too. 8,000 gold, 26 minutes on the inhibitor turrets, just taking them out one by one. Fortunately, though, for Sacred Heart, some sign of life there. They aren't able to take much more off of that just because the tier 1 mid turret is still up. They probably should have rotated a couple of people there as they were pushing in the top lane. Do like a 4-1 or even like a 3-2 there. So that way there, they could have taken both that turret and the inhibitor and looked to close out the game a little bit earlier, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with doing it by the books, especially when you have, you know, a 7,000, 8,000 gold lead.
Red team's turret has been destroyed.
We see Cassiopeia now, and you can see, so Albany has now gone for this 1-3-1 push, where you have the Ornn in the top lane as your 1, you have your support bot laner and jungle and mid as your 3, and then you have your mid laner in the bot side jungle as your other 1. So this is going to be a nice push. Typically you want to do this with Baron. This way here, you can just kind of put as much pressure as efficiently as you can against the enemy team. And you can kind of see they're putting pressure on this mid turret, but you can also see the minion waves as the super minions are coming in from the top side. And Cassiopeia, 4 shots, and Set is already at half health. It is not looking great. And again, that's just the Set not really having a ton of magic resistance, not really building for his lane when you're Set. And if you're going to die 3 times early like that too, you really want to start moving to more resistances and more to tank. Tank Set is always been pretty decent as well. But before I say that, Ornn may be getting caught out here, but he ends up getting away thanks to Lee Sin. But going back to the Set, it makes it really, really tough. You know, you want to build a little bit more of those resistances. If you're already going for that Bork build and you're not able to pull ahead, it's not great. But they pull back the Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench ends up going down. Ken the Braum. The Braum does stomp the Ornn ultimate. That's what we've been trying to see all game and what that pick is known to do. But Albany's 4v5, and they're able to just kind of push into the turrets here. we'll see if they're able to kind of finish the game. You can see that U Albany is pinging for the Drake there. 1 minute left on the timers. They're just going to back off, try and get that Drake, get that Infernal Soul, and then just cleanly close out the game here. So they probably could have stayed, but they don't want to give up that Drake. So instead, they're just going to go back, reset, clear some vision, get that Drake, and do as much as they can. So. I do want to emphasize the performance that we're currently seeing out from the bot lane of U Albany, as again, they have had some incredibly back-to-back games. I'm looking at some of their previous games as well, and sometimes they wouldn't ever really be a weak point for their team, but they would never be the kind of standout player. When you look at how U Albany got most of their wins, they were getting wins out from mostly the mid lane, mostly the top lane, but not really ever from the bot lane. Back-to-back games, 0 deaths. That's a huge performance from Rude TMC. And now with the Infernal Soul, this game is over in everything but name. Tom Kench helping the center rotate down to the bot lane and catching out Andrew for the 5th time this match. But he doesn't end up going down. The set ends up ulting him in, but he ends up getting killed by the Lee Sin no matter what. Braum looking to ultimate just to stay alive just for a little bit longer. Goes down to the Cassiopeia, and that gives Orin a free ultimate in. Tom Kent flashing forward, trying to get the tongue lash, and now they're looking to take out this set as, again, Orin just kind of claps him in with his hammer, with his forge, and that is the game. Senna trying not to die to the Rise, looking to close out, patting that KDA. Oh, and no! Rune, what are you doing, bud? He had a deathless series, and he messed it up with that death against the Rise. Unfortunate, but anyways, U Albany wins the game. GG's to them as they take the series 2-0 over Sacred Heart. Great gameplay coming out from them. Overall, just kind of a really clean match coming out from, U Albany there. As again, they take it. They are now qualified for the Riot CLL Invitational. Again, they'll be joining 32 other teams from both the regional conferences and the partnered conferences with Riot, starting on the 27th. Again, they're guaranteed a seeding. We're going to find out if they are the 1 seed coming out from the ECAC or the 2 seed coming out, again, that 7 p.m. game against Johnson Wales University. So, but again, I didn't like the draft coming out from Sacred Heart. That, was really, really tough. They kind of drafted 2 losing lanes in a losing jungle matchup. And then they didn't necessarily, the Lilia didn't really go top at all into that Ornn matchup. And Lilia and the Ornn in the set matchup is a really, really good pair there. They should be able to get, they should be able to get a really good fight. And unfortunately, they weren't able to close that out or get anything done in that top lane. And instead, it's just a game that went the way of U Albany.
But that does set us up for a really good game tonight. Ideally, we're going to see 2 absolute powerhouses of teams going head-to-head tonight. And we should see beautiful displays of skill on both sides. Hopefully, maybe some closer matches than we saw this morning. Or not this morning, but this afternoon, this evening. We'll hopefully see some very, very close games. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, the cool thing about this already is that all of these teams have actually matched up at some point, except for Johnson Wales and Sacred Heart. They'll unfortunately, they didn't get to play each other, and they won't as Sacred Heart now. Probably very heartbroken, but again, their season has come to an end, at least for fall. They will always have the spring season that'll always be coming up, as again, this is just a fall invitational. However, they should be really proud of the progress that they made. Again, they did lose to U Albany 2-0 earlier this season, but to come back and 2-0 SUNY Canton, the 4 seed or the 4th seed in the conference, and the 2 seed Stockton, 2 really clean 2-0 games out of those, 2 very one-sided games, even more one-sided than the ones that we saw here today. Again, they were able to take out wins against some really, really tough competition. So it's unfortunate that they won't be getting a qualifying seed. but we'll definitely be able to see them in the spring and see how they can kind of turn things around. Even to talk a little bit about the matchups tonight, Johnson Wales and UAlbany have already met once earlier. Johnson Wales did take that set 2-0 in a semi-clean fashion as well. The games were pretty one-sided, but again, UAlbany is looking like they had learned from some of their mistakes earlier in those games, and they were able to just kind of close it out against Sacred Heart.
Right. Yeah, I can't emphasize. I'm really excited to see two absolute powerhouses of teams go head to head this evening.
So,
I'm hoping to not see quite a one-sided game like we talked about before.
and it could be a huge marathon because the way that tonight's going to work, if UAlbany wins that series, the first series 2-0, it actually resets the bracket. So what that means is UAlbany has to beat Johnson and Wales twice in a best of 3. So they have to win 2 games, and then after that they have to win another 2 games. So we could be in for a pretty late night, just kind of seeing, or it could end early if Johnson and Wales just takes 2-0.
Gotcha.
So they just need to win once. UAlbany needs to win twice. But either way, both of those teams still end up getting that national invitation. They still both qualified for the Invitational on Tuesday, the 27th, starting at 7 p.m. So again, with both of those teams now kind of qualified, it's just based on seeding. So the way that seeding is going to work for the tournament as well, the 1 seed from each of the conferences are going to be seeded, highly in the tournament. Then it's going to be the 2 seed from all the conferences, then the 3 seeds, 4 seeds, 5 seeds, and 6 seeds from the remaining regionals. So every partnered conference gets 1 or 2 seeds. Their teams will be rated higher. Your seeding is based on your overall record within your particular conference. Okay. So again, if you've kind of blew through your conference, you should be seeded pretty highly. That all being said, the regional conferences are going to be seeded higher than all of the partnered conferences as well. So the East, North, South, and West regions will be getting the 1 through 4 seeds. Then it will be the 1 seeds for the individual conferences, filling out kind of the 5 through 11 seeds. And then it will be the 2 seeds from the regions, the 2 seeds from the partnered conferences, and then the remaining seeds from the regional conferences. So,
Muse, real quick, do we have any interviews that we're doing before we end out the afternoon stream?
I believe we're going to have a couple of interviews. I think we're going to take a quick short break here, though, as we kind of talk to the teams and see if either one of them want to come in for a quick interview. So we will be right back as we take this short break.
Terrific. I think we are not going to be doing any interviews this evening. Both teams are preparing to go train for the next cup. I'd assume nobody's available. Aaron, any final thoughts?
I mean, again, just kind of reiterating too, there will be that second game, 7 p.m. on this Twitch channel, ECAC_esports, as well as ESTV's YouTube and Facebook page as well. So again, catch all the action there. 7 p.m. Johnson and Wales, the 1 seed, takes on U Albany, the 3 seed, for the finals, for that final seeding to see who will be the 1 seed from ECAC, who will be the 2 seed. And we can get a really nice glimpse as to how both of these teams will end up performing in the fall invitational finals.
Absolutely.
So again, we thank everyone for watching. Again, this was a great series to cast. Again, my name is Aaron the Paradox Muse, and I have with me Jag as well. We've been both of your casters, and it's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.